of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Sunday, January 25th, 2026. Your reader for this hour is Nick, due to the winter storm that is currently covering Buffalo. The offices of the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service is closed, so we're reading again from home. We move over to the weather for our Western New York forecast. Frigid today with snow at times, accumulation 3 to 6 inches, high of 14. Snow and flurries tonight, accumulating 1 to 3 inches, low of 12. Snow showers tomorrow, accumulating up to an inch. Storm total snowfall 6 to 10 inch, high of 17. National high today is in Fort Myers, Florida at 86 degrees. And the low is in Cook, Minnesota, 38 degrees. Minus 38 degrees, I should say. Snow in Buffalo season today is 51.5 inches. That's putting us in the lead in the snow derby, beating out Anchorage by about 6 inches. Tonight is the first half moon in the lunar cycle. Sunrise today is at 7:37 a.m. Sunset is at 5:19 p.m. We move now to our front page story, the big story of the weekend. Second person shot and killed by federal agents in Minnesota. Federal immigration officers shot and killed a man Saturday in Minneapolis, drawing hundreds of protesters in a city already shaken by another fatal shooting weeks earlier. Details surrounding the shooting weren't immediately clear, but Minnesota Governor Tim Walz said the person was shot amid the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. The Minnesota Star Tribune reported that the man was identified as Alex Jeffrey Preddy, 37, according to sources familiar with the investigation. Preddy has an address listed in South Minneapolis. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara said the man who was shot had no serious criminal history and a record that showed some parking tickets. Law enforcement sources say there are records showing Preddy had no serious criminal history. O'Hara described the man as a lawful gun owner with a permit. Records showed that Preddy attended the University of Minnesota. State records show Preddy was issued a nursing license in 2021 and remains active through March 2026. According to the Star Tribune, the Department of Homeland Security said federal agents were conducting a targeted operation in Minneapolis at 9:05 a.m. Saturday, looking for an illegal alien wanted for violent assault. An individual approached Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun, the agency said in a statement. The officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. Fearing for his life and the life and safety of his fellow officers, an agent fired defensive shots. The department's statement continued. Medics on scene immediately delivered medical aid to the subject, was pronounced dead at the scene. DHS said the man had 2 magazines and no ID, and that more information will be coming. The shooting happened amid widespread daily protests in the Twin Cities since the January 7th shooting of 37-year-old Renee Good, who was killed when an Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer fired into her vehicle. Saturday's shooting unfolded just over a mile away from where Good was killed. After the incident, an angry crowd gathered and screamed profanities at federal officers, calling them cowards and telling them to go home. One officer responded mockingly as he walked away, telling them, "Boo-hoo." Agents elsewhere shoved a yelling protester into a car. Protesters dragged garbage dumpsters from alleyways to block the streets, and people who gathered chanted "ICE out now," referring to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. "They're killing my neighbors," said Minneapolis resident Josh Koski. Federal officers wielded batons and deployed flashbangs on the crowd. O'Hara said also said people at the scene were warned multiple times to leave as it is an unlawful assembly. Residents were also asked to avoid the area. Please do not destroy our city, O'Hara said. After the shooting, dozens of federal agents climbed into unmarked vehicles and departed the scene. Agents hanging from doors of a moving car threw several canisters of chemical irritants as they drove the wrong way down a one-way street. Protesters responded by throwing snowballs. Walz, a Democrat, said in a social media post he has been in contact with the White House. He urged President Trump to end what Homeland Security has called its largest ever immigration enforcement operation. Pull the thousands of violent, untrained officers out of Minneapolis now, Walz said on X. At a news conference, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey said he saw a video of 6 masked men pummeling one of our citizens and shoot him. How many more Americans need to die or get badly hurt for this operation to end, Frey asked. How many more lives need to be lost before this administration realizes that the political and partisan narrative is not as important as American values? Senators Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith, both Democrats of Minnesota, both reacted to the news. Smith demanded that ICE leave following the catastrophic shooting so the Minneapolis Police Department can secure the scene and do their jobs. Klobuchar said she was working to get more information on the shooting, but echoed Walz and said President Trump and Republicans must get ICE out of our state now. We continue with some other news. This one has a more local connection. Clergy sex abuse survivors will give statements in court. Michael F. Wallen Jr. stood on a Main Street sidewalk 8 years ago to tell the world he was molested by a priest as a teenager. His emotional news conference outside the Catholic Center on a cold February morning helped set in motion a cascade of other events. An accused priest's admission to molesting probably dozens of children, a flood of other childhood sex abuse victims stepped forward to report their abuse. As the Attorney General's Office investigation into Buffalo Diocese, hundreds of Children Victims Act lawsuits accused clergy of abuse in a diocese bankruptcy filing in 2020 under the weight of all that litigation. Now Wallen has been selected to kick off a series of statement sessions that begin on Tuesday before Judge Carl L. Buckeye in federal bankruptcy court. He's among at least 80 abuse survivors who have been asked and have been scheduled to give remarks in the court over 4 days. I'm out here to heal. I'm not there to say anything bad about anybody, said Wallen. But a lot of people are going to be there wanting to vent. The sessions are open to the public. They won't be like typical court hearings, and that no court reporters will be on hand to create transcripts. And while audio recordings of the sessions will be made, the judge has said he will seal the recordings, making them unavailable to any party without a court order. Statements made in the sessions will carry no legal weight in the diocese's ongoing Chapter 11 case or in any state court lawsuits. Wallen, 60, of South Buffalo, says he wants other abuse survivors to know that they're not alone. Since he came forward with his story of abuse in the late 70s at the hands of Reverend Norbert F. Orslidis, Wallen said he's received calls and texts from as far as Ireland from other survivors. I've talked and cried with them for hours at a time, he said. If I helped just one survivor, then it's all been worth it. Orsolitz died in 2021 at age 81. After Wallen's press conference in 2018, Orsolitz said he didn't recall Wallen's name, but also admitted to a Buffalo News reporter who showed up at the priest's Town of Ashford home that he had molested probably dozens of boys in the 70s and 80s prior to receiving treatment at Southdown Institute in Ontario. The stunning admissions helped fuel an avalanche of claims against hundreds of clergy and other employees of the diocese, undermining the assurances of church leaders over many years that any abuses in this region were rare and properly dealt with. Soon it became clear that church officials had here engaged in similar cover-ups and obfuscations for the crimes of abusive clergy as the Archdiocese of Boston and other places with molestation scandals. Kevin Braun, who sued the Buffalo Diocese in 2018, alleging the abuse by the Reverend Arthur Smith when he was a teenager, said he'd been waiting for years for the chance to speak in court. It's something that I prayed for since the outset of the bankruptcy, so it was to get the opportunity to expose with the employees of the Diocese of Buffalo the damage and the destruction that they've caused. I want the world to hear it, said Brunn of West Seneca. Brunn said he wants to make sure he maintains his composure during his remarks, which will include the recounting of the death of his son Patrick. I don't want to be going to pieces up there, he said. I'm going to do whatever it takes, no matter what the fallout is for me emotionally, physically, to try and bring justice and to bring an end to this nightmare. In addition to Tuesday's sessions will be held on Wednesday and on February 25th and 26th. All are scheduled to begin at 10 a.m. in the Robert H. Jackson U.S. Courthouse at 2 Niagara Square in Buffalo. Bishop Michael W. Fisher will attend the session, said Gregory W. Tucker, Diocese spokesman. Tucker said the bishop believes it is essential that those who feel the need to express themselves in this context do so. Fisher will be listening with an open heart and mind, with complete empathy and full attention to the trauma they have experienced and have had to endure through no fault of their own, he added. We continue with our coverage of the front page, with New Schools Chief cites challenges kids face at home. New Buffalo School Superintendent Pascal Mubenga took nearly an hour Friday to inform Buffalo's business and nonprofit communities of his insights on the district's academic approaches, principles, responsibilities, and specific areas of concerns, like transportation and special education. But Mubenga made clear that it's Mubenga. I added a U there by mistake. The challenges the district students face. Some of them are facing domestic violence, some of them are facing food insecurity, and some of them are struggling academically. Then they get to school where they are 2 or 3 years behind, Mubenga said. That's really bringing a lot of pressure on them. And that's causing mental health issues. On top of that, there are social media pressures. The impact of students' lives outside of school on their academic performance was a repeated topic on Mubenga's Fireside Chat on Friday in Seneca One Tower, hosted by Highmark and the Buffalo Urban League. Jessica Cox, president of Highmark Western New York and Northeastern New York, and Thomas Buford, Jr., the president and CEO of the Downtown Community Nonprofit, posed questions to Mubenga, then accepted questions from among an audience of 100 people. The superintendent, who spent 7 years leading Durham public schools, did not avoid any topics. Most were inseparable from the socioeconomic realities faced by children in Buffalo, with its 40% child poverty rate. This is not going to be a BPS problem, Mubenga said. It's going to be a community problem. Mubenga said he wasn't looking for sympathy. He said he was asking for help in meeting some of the community-level challenges that damage children's educational prospects and jeopardize their mental health before they even enter school buildings. His recommendations were as basic as communicating to parents and caregivers and the children themselves about why showing up matters. They have to understand that one of the ways out of poverty is getting a good education, says Mubenga, who has been clear that his own career trajectory was possible only because of his hunger for higher levels of learning. The native of the Democratic Republic of Congo said the schools can fill some, but not all of the students' basic needs. We give them breakfast and lunch, Mubenga said. That's not enough. Those families that are vulnerable need to make sure they have a good meal when they get home. Valuable contributions extend far beyond food and communication, he said. They can be mentorship, tutoring, or simply connecting the district with as many organizations as possible that already excel at these efforts. We need to show them not only what they need to succeed in school, Mbenga said, but how to be a really good citizen. One of the sharpest audience questions was how Mbenga planned to instill and regain the trust of the community, implying that somewhere along the way the trust had deteriorated. I'm going to be fully transparent, Mbenga replied, and I want the community to hold me accountable. A reminder, you're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time now is 16 minutes after the hour, and we move over to some world news. As Russia targets utilities, people in Kiev's towers suffer. Elena Janchuk spends another day of freezing isolation in their high-rise apartments. The former kindergarten teacher has severe rheumatoid arthritis and has been trapped for weeks on the 19th floor for Kiev Tower Block, 650 steps from the ground. Long daily blackouts caused by Russia's bombardment of power plants and transmission lines have made working elevators a luxury. With January temperatures plummeting to 14 degrees, there's a permanent line of frost on the outside of Janchuk's windows, white patterns creeping across the glass by morning. The 53-year-old huddles over a makeshift fireplace of candles arranged beneath stacked bricks, designed to absorb and slowly release heat. USB charging tables snake across the floor from overloaded power strips, while her electric blanket is hooked up to a power bank rationed for the coldest hours. When there's no light and heat for 17 and a half hours, you have to come up with something, she said. The bricks work best in a small room, so we stay in there. By day, the family shifts into rooms that catch the winter sun. The function of each space changing with the blackout schedule. At night, heavy clothes stay on indoors as the apartment cools rapidly without central heating. Kiev, a city of about 3 million people, is dominated by tower blocks, many from the Soviet era, now left without power for most of the day. In this fourth winter of war, electricity is a rationed commodity. Residents plan their lives around electricity schedules, when to cook, shower, charge phones, and run washing machines. Food is chosen for shelf life. Water filtered into bottles and stored in buckets. Small camping gas burners are used to heat soup or tea when the power is out. Sleep is fractured by air raid sirens and the need to use electricity during off-peak hours. Outside, across snow-covered Kiev, diesel generators rumble on commercial streets. Shoppers navigate aisles using phone flashlights, and bars glow by candlelight. Apps notify users of narrowing electricity windows. Usually just a few hours, enough for a household reboot. Janchuk's 22-story building is located near a power station, and residents can see the missile and drone attacks firsthand, flashlights lighting up the horizon at night. During blackouts, they climb the stairs in darkness, phone lights bouncing off concrete steps, often accompanied by the echo of children and barking dogs. People sometimes leave plastic bags with cookies or water inside elevators for those who get stuck when the power cuts mid-ride. Janchuk's husband, out working most of the day, brings the groceries in the evening, while her mother, 72-year-old Ludmila Bukharina, is in charge of chores. It's cold, but we manage, the mother says, holding a square USB-charged flashlight she recently mounted on the wall. When the lights come on, they start turning on the washing machine, fill up water bottles, cook food, charge power banks, run the kitchen, and run around the house. In the upscale neighborhoods, residents pool funds for generators to keep elevators running. But most blocks, home to pensioners, families, and people with disabilities, cannot afford them. Disability advocates, including groups representing wounded war veterans, say staircases have become an invisible social barrier, cutting people off inside their own homes. They are urging city officials to fund generators for residential buildings. Until then, life bends around the electricity timetable. USB lamps, power banks, and inverter batteries have become household staples. Telegram chats help neighbors check on the elderly and swap blackout updates. From upper floors, Kievans look over a skyline of high rises in the city's historic golden domed churches. At night, flashes of explosions are visible as Russia continues its campaign against Ukraine's energy system. Too many power stations and transmission lines have been hit to meet demand, even with electricity imports from Europe. To prevent a grid collapse, operators impose rolling blackouts, keeping hospitals and critical services alive while homes go dark. One coal-powered power plant struck repeatedly. Shift supervisor Yuri walks through wreckage of charred machinery, collapsed roofs, and control panels melted into useless lumps. Repairs are carried out by torchlight, giant sandbags shielding what still works. Photographs of colleagues killed on the job hang near the entrance. After missile and drone attacks, the consequences are terrible, large scale, he said. Officials asked that the plant's location and Yuri's full name not be disclosed for security reasons. Our energy equipment has been destroyed. It is expensive, Yuri said. Right now, we're restoring what we can. Ukraine's energy sector has suffered more than $20 billion in direct war damage, according to a joint estimate by the World Bank, the European Commission, and the United Nations. Kiev has repeatedly updated its austere winter power saving schedule, dimming or cutting streetlights in low traffic areas, and investing in less centralized power generation. And the tower block's restoration feels far off. I'm tired, really tired to be honest. When you can't go outside, when you don't see the sun, when there's no light and you can't go to the store on your own, it wears you down, Bakarina said. But the important thing, as all Ukrainians say now, is that we will endure anything until this war ends. In South Sudan, eyed relief from U.S. for accepting deportees. After agreeing to accept deportees from the United States last year, South Sudan sent a list of requests to Washington that included American support for the prosecution of an opposition leader and sanctions relief for a senior official accused of diverting over $1 billion in public funds. The request, contained in a pair of diplomatic communications made public by the State Department this month, offered a glimpse into the kind of benefits that some governments have sought as they negotiated with the U.S. over a matter of receiving deportees. In the documents, the U.S. expresses appreciation to South Sudan for accepting the deportees and details the names, nationalities, and crimes for which each individual was convicted. In July, South Sudan became the first African country to receive third country deportees from the U.S., Rwanda, Eswatini, Ghana, and Equatorial from the U.S. Rwanda, Eswatini, Ghana, and Equatorial Guinea have since received deportees. 8 deportees to South Sudan included nationals to Mexico, Cuba, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, and South Sudan itself. They arrived in the South Sudanese capital of Juba after spending weeks at a U.S. military base in Djibouti, where they were held after a U.S. court to temporarily block their deportation. 6 of the 8 men remain at a residential facility in Juba under the supervision of security personnel. South Sudanese national Dian Peter Domak was later freed according to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, while Jesus Munoz Gutierrez, a Mexican who was repatriated in September. South Sudanese officials have not publicly said what long-term plan is in place for those still in custody. Their third country deportations were highly contentious, criticized by rights groups and others who expressed concern South Sudan would become a dumping ground. Details of the deal between the U.S. and South Sudan remain murky. It is unclear what, if anything, South Sudan may have actually received or been promised. The documents only offer a glimpse into what the South Sudanese government hoped to get in return. In other cases, Human Rights Watch said it saw documents showing the U.S. agreed to pay Rwanda's government around $7.5 million to take up to 250 deportees. The U.S. will give Eswatini $5.1 million to take up 260 deportees, according to the group. From South Sudan, in one communication dated May 12th and marked confidential, South Sudan's Minister of Foreign Affairs raised 8 matters of concern which the government of Sudan believes merit consideration. These range from the easing of visa restrictions for South Sudanese nationals to the construction of a rehabilitation center in support of addressing the problem of armed civilians. But an eye-catching ask was for the lifting of U.S. sanctions against former Vice President Benjamin Bull Mel, as well as Washington's support for the prosecution of opposition leader Riek Machar, the now suspended first Vice President of South Sudan, who faces treason, murder, and other criminal charges in a controversial case. The allegations against Machar stem from an incident in March when an armed militia with historical ties to him attacked a garrison of government troops. Machar's supporters and some activists described the charges as politically motivated. Bull-Mel is accused of diverting more than $1 billion earmarked for infrastructure projects into companies he owns or controls, according to a UN report. He wielded vast influence in government and was touted by some as Kiir's likely successor in the presidency until he was dismissed and placed under house arrest in November. But Mel was also viewed as a key figure behind the prosecution of Machar, one of the historical leaders of the South Sudan's ultimately successful quest for independence from Sudan in 2011. Machar was Kiir's deputy when they fell out in 2013, provoking the start of a civil war as government troops loyal to Kiir fought forces loyal to Machar. A 2018 peace agreement brought Machar back into government as the most senior office of 5 vice presidents. His prosecution has been widely criticized as a violation of that agreement and has coincided with a spike in violence. The UN has killed more than 1,800 people between January and September of 2025. The UN has also warned that a resurgence of fighting has brought the country back to the edge of a relapse in the civil war. Machar is under house arrest in Juba while his criminal trial proceeds slowly. In communications with the U.S., South Sudan also asked for sanctions to be lifted over South Sudanese oil companies to encourage direct foreign investment, and for the U.S. to consider investing in other sectors, including fossil fuels, minerals, and agriculture. When asked if the U.S. government had provided or promised South Sudan anything in return for accepting the deportees, the State Department official said, in keeping with standard diplomatic practice, we do not disclose the details of private discussions. A spokesman for South Sudan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Thomas Kenneth Elisbana, declined to comment. A reminder, you're listening to a reading of the day's Buffalo News. The time now is about 30 minutes after the hour. And as I mentioned with the weather, The office of the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service is closed due to our next story. Massive winter storm takes aim across big chunk of the country. More than 11,000 flights across the U.S. were set to take off over the weekend. Were canceled as a massive monster storm started to wreak havoc Saturday across much of the country and threatened to knock out power for days and snarl major roadways with dangerous ice. Roughly 140 million people, or more than 40% of the U.S. population, were under a winter storm warning from New Mexico to New England. The National Weather Service forecast warned of widespread heavy snow and a band of catastrophic ice stretching from East Texas to North Carolina. By midday Saturday, a quarter of an inch of ice was reported in parts of southeastern Oklahoma, eastern Texas, and portions of Louisiana. What really makes this storm unique is just following this storm, it's going to get so cold, said Allison Santorelli, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. The snow and the ice will be very, very slow to melt and won't be going away anytime soon, and that's going to hinder any recovery efforts. All Saturday flights were canceled at Will Rogers International Airport in Oklahoma City, and all Sunday morning flights were also called off, as officials aimed to restart service Sunday afternoon at the state's biggest airport. The Texas Department of Transportation on Saturday posted images of snow-covered highways and suburbs north of Dallas. Ice and sleet that hit northern Texas overnight moved toward the central part of the state on Saturday. By mid-morning Saturday, ice had formed on roads and bridges in a third of Mississippi's counties, according to Scott Simons, a spokesman for the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency. Little Rock, Arkansas was covered with sleet and snow Saturday morning, giving Chris Plank doubts about whether he would be able to make a 5-hour drive to Dallas for work on Sunday. While some snow was a yearly event, he could only recall 3 ice storms in the previous 20 years that he had lived in Little Rock, and that potential ice cut concerned him the most. All the power lines are above ground, so it doesn't take very much to end up in the dark, Plank said Saturday morning. Forecasters say damage, especially in areas pounded by ice, could rival that of a hurricane. More than 95,000 power outages were reported across the country Saturday morning, about 36,000 of them in Texas and 10,000 more in Virginia. Governors in more than a dozen states sounded the alarm about the turbulent weather ahead, declaring emergencies or urging people to stay at home. As of noon Eastern Time Saturday, almost 4,000 flights were canceled, according to the weather tracking website FlightAware. More than 7,600 flights were called off for Sunday. Among the hardest hit airports were Dallas-Fort Worth International, Nashville International in Tennessee, and Charlotte Douglas International Airport in North Carolina. Angela Ekstrom was supposed to fly back to Omaha, Nebraska from a trip in Mexico, but she learned her Saturday flight out of Houston had been canceled, so she is going back via Los Angeles. If you live in the Midwest and travel in the winter, stuff can happen, she said. After sweeping through the south, the storm was expected to move into the northeast, dumping about a foot, 30 centimeters, of snow from Washington through New York and Boston. The Weather Service predicted. Temperatures reached minus 29 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 34 Celsius, just before dawn in rural Lewis County and other parts of upstate New York after days of heavy snow. Churches moved Sunday services online, and the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, Tennessee decided to hold a Saturday night radio performance without fans. Mardi Gras parades in Louisiana were canceled or rescheduled. Schools and superintendents in Philadelphia and Houston announced that Sunday that schools would be closed on Monday. Some universities in the South canceled classes for Monday, including the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and the University of Mississippi's main campus in Oxford. President Trump said via social media on Friday that his administration was coordinating with state and local officials and FEMA is fully prepared to respond. 9 states have requested emergency declarations according to a FEMA briefing document released on Saturday. The declarations can unlock federal emergency responses. Trump on Friday approved emergency declarations for South Carolina and Virginia, and both requests from Arkansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, North Carolina, Tennessee, and West Virginia are still pending as of Saturday morning. We continue with our national news. National, international, we'll call it. Trump threatens 100% tariff on Canada for China deal. President Trump on Saturday threatened a 100% tariff on goods imported from Canada if it went ahead with its China trade deal, intensifying a feud with Prime Minister Mark Carney. Trump said in a social media post that if Carney thinks he is going to make Canada a drop-off port for China to send goods and products into the United States, he is sorely mistaken. While Trump has waged a trade war over the past year, Canada this month negotiated a deal to lower tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles in return for lower import taxes on Canadian farm products. Trump initially had said that the agreement was what Carney should be doing and is a good thing for him to sign the trade deal. Carney's office did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Trump's threat came amid an escalating war of words with Carney as the Republican president's push to acquire Greenland strained the NATO alliance. Trump had commented while in Davos, Switzerland this past week that Canada lives because of the United States. Carney shot back that his nation can be an example that the world does not have to bend toward autocratic tendencies. Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian, he said. Trump later revoked his invitation to Carney to join the president's so-called Board of Peace that he is forming to try and resolve global conflicts. Trump's push to acquire Greenland has come after he has repeatedly needled Canada over its sovereignty and suggested it also be absorbed into the United States as a 51st state. He posted in an alternate image on social media this past week, showing a map of the United States that included Canada, Venezuela, Greenland, and Cuba as part of its territory. In his message Saturday, Trump called Canada's leader Governor Carney. Trump had used the same nickname for Carney's predecessor, Justin Trudeau. His first use of it towards Carney was the latest mark of their soured relationship. Carney has emerged as a leader of a movement for countries to find ways to link up and counter the U.S. under Trump. Speaking in Davos before Trump, Carney said middle powers must act together because if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. And he warned about coercion by great powers without mentioning Trump's name. The Prime Minister received widespread praise and attention for his remarks, upstaging Trump at the World Economic Forum. The Prime Minister even spoke of a rupture between the U.S. under Trump and its Western allies that would never be repaired. Trump in the Truth Social post Saturday also said that China will eat Canada alive, completely devour it, including the destruction of their businesses, social fabric, and general way of life. Carney has not yet reached a deal with Trump to reduce some of the tariffs that he has imposed on key sectors of the Canadian economy. But Canada has been protected by the heaviest impact of Trump's tariffs by the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement. The trade agreement is up for review this year. In the fall, the Canadian province of Ontario aired an anti-tariff ad in the U.S. that prompted Trump to end trade talks with Canada. The television ad used the words of former President Ronald Reagan to criticize U.S. tariffs. Trump pledged to increase tariffs on imports of Canadian goods by an extra 10%. He did not follow through. Canada is a top export destination for 36 U.S. states, nearly 3.6 billion dollars Canadian. It's 2.7 billion U.S. worth of goods and services cross the border each day. About 60% of U.S. crude oil imports are from Canada, and as are 85% of U.S. electricity imports. A reminder, you're listening to a reading of today's newspaper comics on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We move now to some business stories. GameStop closes 3 local stores as sales decline. GameStop will close 3 stores in Erie and Niagara counties as part of a wave of nationwide closings. A slew of GameStop stores were listed as closed Tuesday on the Texas-based company's website. Affected are 3 stores in Western New York: 3500 Main Street near Bailey Avenue, 4960 Transit Road in Depew near Lawson Road, and 5716 South Transit Road in Lockport near Walmart Supercenter. The one on Transit Road is also near Wegmans. The video game retailer could not be reached for comment. In March, GameStop said it would close a significant number of stores in the current fiscal year, which ends January 31st. Customers opting to download games rather than buy physical copies of them has been a cause of its decline, GameStop said. The current consoles from Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft have facilitated download technology, GameStop wrote in Securities and Exchange Commission filings. If consumers' preference for downloading video games content in lieu of physical software continues to increase, our business and financial performance may be adversely impacted. The company closed 590 stores during the 2024 fiscal year, and then more than 3,000 stores left worldwide, according to filings. GameStop stores remain at 1595 Niagara Falls Boulevard in Amherst, the Boulevard Shopping Center, in Amherst, the Boulevard Shopping Center, 2730 Delaware Avenue in Delaware Consumer Square, at Walden Galleria in Cheektowaga, 740 Thruway Plaza Drive in Thruway Plaza, 6733 Transit Road near Worley Plaza in Amherst, 1024 Union Road in Southgate Plaza in West Seneca, 1637 Military Road in Niagara Falls is Wegmans Plaza, and 3701 McKinley Parkway in Blaisdell. GameStop's recent store closures come against the backdrop of one of the most unusual chapters in modern financial history. Its transformation, however, came into a so-called brief into a so-called meme stock. Long known as a brick-and-mortar retailer of video games and consoles, GameStop was doing business in a challenging environment by the 2010s. The rise of digital game downloads, online competitors, and subscription gaming services steadily eroded foot traffic and sales of physical stores. By 2019, the company was closing hundreds of locations and reporting declining revenues, leading many professional investors to bet against the stock through short selling. In late 2021 and early 21, individual investors on the Reddit forum r/Wall Street Bets began aggressively buying GameStop shares and call options. Their motivations were a mix of speculation, internet humor, and coordinated attempt to trigger a short squeeze, a scenario in which rising stock prices forced short sellers to buy shares to cover their positions, driving prices even higher. Shake Shack plans third local store. Shake Shack is wasting no time building additional locations in Erie County after opening its first local restaurant at 1531 Niagara Falls Boulevard in Amherst in May. The New York City headquartered burger chain is planning its third location at 2765 Delaware Avenue in Kenmore, the company said. It will require the redevelopment of the former Kenmore Presbyterian Church that is currently on the site. Another full-service Shake Shack is in the works at 5205 Transit Road in Clarence, and a former Spot Coffee. That site will open this year. In addition to a full-service Shake Shack at the Boulevard, the company opened a limited-service location at the Thruway's Angola rest stop. And Francesca's, a mall-based women's clothing retailer, is closing its more than 450 stores, one of which is in the Walden Galleria. The store is in the process of liquidating its inventory and running sales. Most items are currently marked at 20% off the retail price. The store is located on Walden Gallery's lower level near Dick's. There used to be a Francesca store in the fashion outlets of Niagara Falls, USA, but that store closed as part of a widespread shutdowns announced in 2020 when Francesca's filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Into some news on higher education. Canisius University, its students in the accounting program will be able to gain more hands-on opportunities to explore and research real-world challenges. The school will launch the accounting upstream disciplines in the industry technology lab this spring, with 4 students being selected for the inaugural cohort. Established in partnership with the Althea Research Institution, an international research organization, the lab will help students address emerging issues in the accounting profession and adjacent industries. Students will investigate policy questions, market behavior, and industry challenges while developing critical research skills to complement their accounting education. They will be mentored and advised through collaborative leadership structure. SUNY gives campuses mental health grants. The State University of New York is providing funding to strengthen campus-wide approaches to a student mental health and well-being. Mental health first aid grant program will provide for $8,000 grants for 27 SUNY campuses, including 16 state-operated campuses and 11 community colleges, and will support the delivery of training for almost 3,000 faculty, staff, and other non-clinical campus personnel. Among the SUNY campuses receiving grants through the program are the University at Buffalo, SUNY Fredonia, Jamestown Community College, and SUNY Niagara Community College. The focus on mental health will allow campuses to have increased capacity to navigate, to recognize and respond to students' distress. The funding will support the creation and expansion of programming for instructor certification, campus-wide training, delivery, required materials, and outreach efforts to strengthen mental health literacy. And UB Scholarship aids Lafayette students. A new scholarship program between the University at Buffalo School of Architecture and Planning and the SOM Foundation will benefit Lafayette International High School students. Interested students can apply for the Gordon Bunshaft Award, which will provide the path of entry and support to Buffalo students pursuing a bachelor's degree in architecture at UB. Bunshaft graduated from Lafayette in 1928 and led international architecture and engineering practices. Lafayette serves about 500 immigrant and refugee students who speak more than 40 languages, and the SOM Foundation offers 6 annual awards to support students and faculty of architecture, landscape architecture, interior architecture, urban design, and engineering. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. Again, that's 716-821-5555. We are closed today, but if you leave us a message, we will do our best to get in touch with you as soon as we can. Armilati, James M. Banks, Judith Henry. Benefield, Ernestine. Bonetsky, Robert. Craig, Velma C. Ni Relicki. Cheskowski, Lorraine. Davy, Beverly Ann Nee Hughes. Davis, John R. DeRose, Joanne M. Nee Gardner. Dillinger, Joanne M. Edwards, Jonas. Finn, Betty E. Nee Taylor. Firestone, Pauline E. Flowers, Michael J. Flynn, William James III. Fogel, James F. Jr. Garcia, Carol A. Gibbs, Jeffrey J. Gloss, Robert, also called Bob. Hayes, A. Elaine. Duros, James J. Jesuits, Richard J. Cup, Marlene Nee Paul. Krausick, Peter S. Laporta, John. Lawrence, Jane Nee Davies. Lasanti, Jean G. Mauser, Christopher. McGlynn, Helen J. Nee Sullivan. Morgan, Frederick H. O'Connor, Seamus K. Olivieri, Gene M. Sr. Osalki, Paul. Parfinsuik, Helen Muza. Petrozic, Kathleen A. Nee Kearns. Ploucha, Barbara. Reeves, Joan Plum. Roswell, Dr. Peter G. Rupp, Susan Somerville. Rutkowski, Angela A. Nee Martinelli. Sailor, George. Scalia, Marie Nee Pereira. Schuler, Merlene A. Nee Wackerly. Sinote, James Edward. Smith, Michael G. Snickles, Donald L. Spinoza, Giuseppe S., also called Pino. Strollo, Anthony Ralph. Towns, Carrie P. Trimboli, Grace F. Nee Shepis. Tromether, Kenneth J. Villardo, Marianne Nee Jankowski. Webster, Elaine P. Nee Finn. Weiss, David. Wilkins, Andrew. Winters, Lorraine Jean Nee Beyer. And Yeager, William R. We don't have any national obits today. Just a point mention. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. Again, that's 716-821-5555. And if I butchered the name of anyone you happen to know, I apologize. Polish and Eastern European names are not my specialty. And now for a lighter note, we move over to the horoscopes, the Royal Stars by Georgia Nichols. Again, these are read for entertainment purposes only. They have no reliable basis in fact, unless they sound really good for you. In which case, go for it. Apologize for the yawn there. Happy birthday for Sunday, January 25th, 2026. You are multi-talented, thoughtful, and dynamic. You are witty, entertaining, and charismatic. This is the final year of a 9-year cycle, which means it's time to let go of people. Of the people, places, and things from the past that have held you back. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. 2 Aries. Today is the classic day for arguments and disagreements, which means you need to bite your tongue. Tonight, check your belongings. And Aries is from March 21st to April 19th. Taurus, April 20th to May 20th. Today, the moon is in your sign, at odds with Mars, Pluto, and then the sun. This means it's an emotionally stressful day for you. Tonight, you win. Gemini, May 21st to June 20th, 2 stars. Be smart and steer clear of controversial subjects like politics, religion, and racial issues. They will quickly mushroom into arguments and disagreements. Tonight, solitude. Cancer, June 21st to July 22nd, 3 stars. A disagreement with a friend or a member of a group, perhaps about spending a set amount of money or using shared property, might arise today. Tonight, friendships. Leo, July 22nd to August 22nd. 23rd to August 22nd, I should say. 2 stars. Today the moon is at the top of your chart, at odds with a gaggle of planets directly opposite you. This means it'll be easy to get into an argument with someone who is close to you. Tonight you're noticed. Virgo, August 23rd to September 22nd, 3 stars. Avoid controversial subjects, especially if you're talking to work colleagues or healthcare workers. Meanwhile, arguments related to a pet might occur. Tonight, explore. Libra, September 23rd to October 22nd, 3 stars. You like harmony in your surroundings, despite the fact that you're an excellent debater. This is the classic day for arguments with romantic partners. Tonight, check your finances. Scorpio, October 23rd to November 21st, 2 stars. Today, be patient with partners, spouses, and close friends, as well as family members, to avoid irritable bickering and outright arguments. Tonight, cooperate. Sagittarius, November 22nd to December 21st, 2 stars. Steer clear of work-related disagreements today. They can create bad feelings in the future. It's not worth it. Tonight, work. Capricorn, December 22nd to January 19th, 3 stars. Parents need to be patient with their kids today, especially about money, possessions, and the ownership of something. Tonight, play. Aquarius, January 20th to February 18th, 2 stars. Today you might relax at home, or you might feel annoyed with a family member. Patience will be your best friend. With Mars in your sign, you're a bit aggressive. Tonight, relax. Pisces, February 19th to March 20th, 3 stars. Steer clear of disagreements with daily contacts, siblings, and relatives today. Tonight, discussions. As a reminder, astrological forecasts have no reliable basis in facts, unless they sound really good to you. We're going to do a quick couple things from today in history. We have about a minute here. In 1924, the first Winter Olympics opened in Chamonix, France. In 1945, when the World War II Battle of the Bulge ended as the German army concluded its final offensive on the Western Front, approximately 19,000 U.S. soldiers were killed during the 5-week campaign. In 1945, Grand Rapids, Michigan became the first city to have fluoride to its water supply. In 1961, President Kennedy held the first live televised presidential news conference. In 1971, Charles Manson and 3 of his followers were convicted in Los Angeles of murder conspiracy in the 1969 slayings of 7 people, including actor Sharon Tate. In 2004, NASA's Opportunity rover landed on Mars and sent its first pictures of the planet to Earth. Originally planned as a 90-day mission, the rover remained operational for over 15 years, traveling a total of 28 miles across the planet's surface. In 2011, Egyptians began nationwide protests against longtime autocrat Hosni Mubarak to step down amid the Arab Spring uprisings that swept the Middle East and North Africa. And in 2021, President Biden signed an order reversing a Pentagon policy that largely barred transgender people from military service. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for January 25th, 2026 on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been Nick. Thank you.
Good morning from the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. This is the Sunday, January 25th Buffalo News, and your reader this hour is Chuck Stevens. Our first article from the local section, Nate McMurray launches campaign for Assembly. His former opponent is running for something else. A familiar name in local politics plans to run for the seat of retiring Assembly member Angelo Morinello. Nate McMurray, the former Grand Island supervisor who became known for his unvarnished online commentary during and after his unsuccessful races for Congress, has announced he will seek to replace the Niagara Falls Republican. McMurray launched his campaign in a video posted to Facebook last week. He is the only announced Democrat in the race for the Assembly's 145th District, which covers Niagara Falls, Grand Island, Porter, Lewiston, Cambria, Wheatfield, and a portion of North Tonawanda. The sole announced Republican candidate is Rebecca Weidish, a Lewiston resident and former chair of the Niagara County Legislature, who is Morinello's chosen successor. Morinello is a former Niagara Falls City Court judge, first elected to the Assembly in 2016. He announced earlier this month that he would not seek a sixth term in November's election. Democrats have a narrow enrollment advantage over Republicans in the 145th District, 37.5% to 32% among registered voters. But 30% of voters are registered with minor parties or no party at all. Weidish, the Deputy Commissioner of Jurors for Niagara County, also has the backing of State Senate Minority Leader Rob Ort, the Republican from North Tonawanda, in her campaign to take Morinello's place. I've stood up to Albany before, and I'm running for Assembly to do it again. I'm running to stand up for you, Weidish said, in a campaign announcement video that highlighted the affordability crisis facing New Yorkers. McMurray, a lawyer who advises corporate clients, won the 2015 Grand Island supervisor race by 14 votes. While in office, he pushed for the opening of the West River Parkway multi-use trail, the State of Thruway Authority's Welcome Center, and a Holiday Inn Express at the long-vacant former Hooker Chemical Company headquarters, among other initiatives. McMurray ran and lost against then-Rep. Chris Collins, Republican from Clarence, in the 2018 race that tightened following Collins' indictment on insider trading charges. McMurray in 2019 announced he wouldn't seek a second term as town supervisor because he eyed a rematch with Collins. Collins later pleaded guilty in the case and resigned from office. McMurray then challenged Chris Jacobs in a June 2020 special election and November 2020 general election for Collins' former congressional seat, losing both times. McMurray by then had developed a significant following on Twitter, now known as X, through posts that stirred up staunch support and criticism, including from some fellow Democrats. He expressed interest in challenging Erie County exec Mark Poloncarz in a Democratic primary, and later running for the seat of former Rep. Brian Higgins, D. Buffalo, before ending both bids for office. We just don't have to accept the way things always work. We don't have to accept leaders that just disappear, or are members of some party machine that you're not a part of. We can think independently. We can change this region, and I'm not willing to accept the status quo, McMurray said in his own announcement video. McMurray, whose NateCast podcast is described as truth politics and the fight for democracy from the Niagara region, announced his campaign on last Sunday. 5 days later on Friday, his former foe, Collins, made an announcement of his own. Collins made official that he previously told the Buffalo News he was planning to do. He's running to return to Congress from a safely Republican district in South Florida. Collins was sentenced to 26 months in prison following his guilty plea in federal court to insider trading. He reported to federal prison in October 2020, but served just 2 months before he was pardoned by President Trump. Collins, the first sitting member of Congress to endorse Trump during the 2016 campaign, highlights his early support of Trump in his campaign announcement Friday that calls him a successful businessman, America First fighter, and the original Trump conservative. Next up from the Buffalo News, a retired Dunkirk treasurer accused in the theft of $120,000. Retired City of Dunkirk treasurer Mark A. Woods was arrested Friday on allegations that he stole more than $120,000 from the financially strapped Chautauqua County City, covered it up, and spent some of the ill-gotten proceeds to gamble. Woods, age 73, of Dunkirk, who served as the city's treasurer for more than 25 years, was arrested by Dunkirk police and arraigned on a 14-count indictment, charging him with corrupting the government in the first degree, a felony that carries a maximum of 25 years in prison, second-degree grand larceny, and offering a false instrument for filing for allegedly presenting false information. Woods' indictment comes in the wake of an investigation by Chautauqua County District Attorney Jason Schmidt and State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli. Dunkirk, a city of 12,743, sitting on Lake Erie, has faced financial issues that led Governor Kathy Hochul to issue a $13.7 million emergency loan in June under a bill that passed the state legislature. As Dunkirk's severe financial troubles escalated, Mr. Woods allegedly betrayed his community and public duty by allegedly scheming to steal over $120,000 in public money he was sworn to safeguard, DiNapoli said in a statement. DiNapoli issued a review in November that found Dunkirk's financial records so out of date, inaccurate, and incomplete that it kept his office from fully evaluating the city's 2026 budget. Last year, Dunkirk enacted an 84% property tax. The city has experienced fiscal issues stemming in part from the 2016 closure of the NRG power plant, which had provided Dunkirk with $3 million annually in payments in lieu of taxes. On Friday, Dunkirk Mayor Kate Wojtowicz explained that when she took office in January of 2024, she was unable to access the city's financial records from Woods. One of her priorities, she said, was to require shared access to financial records, which exposed the alleged scam and led to Woods' arrest, according to DiNapoli. The indictment said Woods stole property belonging to the city on different occasions through the use of his public office, pursuant to a single ongoing intent to deprive another of the property or to appropriate the property to himself. Woods pleaded not guilty during his arraignment before State Supreme Court Justice Grace M. Hanlon. A news release issued by the Comptroller's Office alleged that Woods had engaged in a check for cash substitution scheme to cover up the thefts. It described a sequence of events as follows. As treasurer, Woods was expected to collect and record money paid to the city and send it to the entities such as the Dunkirk School District. In March, district officials noticed irregularities in payments. For months, Woods had been depositing non-school tax payments as well as checks for water and sewer taxes into the district's account. That led the school officials to contact Wojtowicz, who in turn referred the matter to county prosecutors. Schmidt worked with DiNapoli's office to investigate the matter. A joint probe revealed that from April of 2022 through January 2025, Woods had stolen more than $120,000 in cash payments made for taxes and revenue, officials said. A forensic analysis of Dunkirk's financial and city records showed that in an alleged effort to cover up thefts, Woods failed to report all the tax payments from utility companies he had received. Woods hid the shortfall in money by substituting the amount of the unrecorded utility payment, then placed part of the alleged stolen money into his personal bank account. The malfeasance went undetected due to Woods' control over the city's collections and record keeping. The forensic analysis of Woods' finances showed he withdrew substantial amounts of cash, which he used to gamble, the release said. It said the withdrawals and expenditures significantly exceeded any income he derived from legitimate sources. Last month, investigators for DiNapoli and Schmidt closed off Wood's office and seized records. Any abuse of office by a public official is intolerable, but to steal public funds while residents' taxes rise to cover financial shortfalls is particularly appalling, DiNapoli said in a statement, adding that due to his office's joint investigation with Schmidt, Woods will now be held accountable for his reprehensible conduct. Schmidt, in a statement, noted that it was the second time within 3 years that a Dunkirk public official was arrested on charges of corruption. In May of 2023, an investigation from DiNapoli and Schmidt led to charges being brought against Dunkirk Festivals coordinator Hector Rosas for allegedly using his position to steal more than $50,000. The case remains pending. In both cases, the defendants were public officials entrusted with the hard-earned tax dollars of its residents, many of whom are retired blue-collar workers who supported our local factories and manufacturing plants through tough economic times, bought their first and only homes here, raised their families here, and retired here, where they continue to live and support Dunkirk, Schmidt said. They are the backbone of our community, people on fixed incomes, barely scraping by, who ask nothing more of their elected and appointed officials than to competently and honestly do their jobs they were hired to do. Chautauqua County Executive P.J. Wendell said in a statement that he had concerns about potential wrongdoing in Dunkirk for some time. He said he personally reached out to attorney Letitia James in DiNapoli to ensure proper oversight. What makes this situation even more troubling is that it is not an isolated incident, Wendell said. Dunkirk's financial records have long been disorganized and incomplete, and a lack of effective oversight allowed mismanagement and allegedly criminal conduct to persist for years. The city's residents and taxpayers deserve better, and it's clear that deep systemic problems must be addressed. In a joint statement, Senator George Borrello, Republican from Sunset Bay, and Assembly member Andrew Molitor, Republican from Westfield, who represents Chautauqua County and Albany, called Wood's alleged betrayal of the public trust deeply troubling and profoundly disappointing. You're listening to the Sunday, January 25th Buffalo News. Your reader, Chuck Stevens. Well, no surprise. The weather is on everyone's mind. Some colleges will close Monday as Western New York officials plan for frigid temperatures and then widespread snow. The major snowstorm hitting our region Sunday afternoon through early Monday has nothing to do with Lake Erie this time around, which is a change. Instead, it's part of a much broader system of Arctic air, bringing frigid temperatures, snow and ice, and a broad sweeping stroke from Arizona to Maine. Western New York, no stranger to winter preparedness, but this time, piles of snow and ice will be sweeping through all of New York, all of the Northeast, and much of the rest of the country. Locally, heaviest snowfall is expected over a 12-hour period, starting around 1, with total accumulations of 8 to 14 inches until Tuesday morning. Because of its widespread nature and an anticipated stretch of weeks of below freezing temperatures, Governor Kathy Hochul already declared a state of emergency Friday, while a number of schools and colleges have already announced the cancellation of all classes and activities for Monday, including the University at Buffalo and SUNY Buffalo State. Other universities with the State University of New York are following suit and avoiding in-person classes and activities. At the government level, the incoming storm means more ongoing communication among public officials. When storms are on the horizon, at the county level, we are preparing as far in advance as possible, said Erie County spokesperson Peter Anderson. As we have seen, early warnings don't always materialize into big snowfalls, but vigilance and preparation remain the same. This includes not only ensuring county departments are prepared, but also checking in with municipal partners elected leaders, and emergency managers. This time of the year is recognized as the cold heart of winter for a reason. The last time we enjoyed temperatures at or above freezing was Thursday, but that kind of quote-unquote heat wave is unlikely until mid-February, said Liz Jarowski, meteorologist with the National Weather Service. Friday's low hit 0 degrees, the lowest temperature of the season. It's going to be pretty chilly for the next 2 to 3 weeks, she said. The dangers of low extended temperatures range from frostbite and hypothermia to cardiac arrest and even death. It's possible that the cold temperatures may have already played a role in the local death. Amherst, New York Scanner, a Facebook poster, said Saturday morning that a woman was found dead in a Maple Road parking lot, not wearing a jacket or shoes. The Amherst Police Department said no information on the matter would be provided until Monday. Public health agencies have issued warnings about staying inside, limiting outdoor exposure, dressing appropriate with hats and gloves, and keeping a winter emergency kit in your car. Indoors, residents are urged to look after pets and keep space heaters clear from any potentially flammable material. Meanwhile, Anderson said government leaders at the local and state levels continue to remain engaged. If it's a more prolonged storm, this means regular update calls with local and/or New York State elected officials, update calls with the Weather Service, update calls with road and emergency departments fighting the storm, and so on, he said in a statement. Storm response is constant from the first moment a potential problem appears on the horizon until its ultimate resolution, whatever that may be. That includes a robust and resource-filled social media presence. No two storms are the same, but lessons can be learned from all of them and best practices developed from there. And our next local story, when their HOA banned from front yard ice rinks, this Clarence family skated to court and won. The Zinnos aren't on thin legal ice anymore. The family from Clarence had found trouble with their homeowners association after setting up an ice rink in their front yard for their hockey-loving son and his friends to use. The association for their Waterford Village neighborhood didn't have any rules about ice rinks then. The association board swiftly updated its regulations to say rinks are allowed in backyards only and fined the Zinnos for violating the new bylaws. Unbowed by the icy reception, the Zinnos continued to set up the rink each winter and sued their HOA. Earlier this month, a state Supreme Court judge ruled in the Zinnos' favor, finding the association didn't follow proper procedure in revising its rules on ice rinks. Owning property in our country is a fundamental right, and being able to do what you want within reason on your property is fundamental to what we believe in the United States, Deanna Zinno said in an interview. So we were glad. It's not known whether the Waterford Village Association will appeal the decision. The association in court filings insisted it acted appropriately in changing its regulations to limit where homeowners can build an ice rink. It said the Zinnos' front yard rink detracted from the subdivision's aesthetics and prompted complaints from neighbors. The organization's leadership didn't respond to a request for comment made through their attorney, Megan M. Brown. The Zinno family has lived in their home on Killarney Manor since 2015. It's part of a luxury subdivision of single-family homes and condominiums between Shimerville and Thompson Roads, where most streets have Irish-influenced names. A 2004 declaration sets out rules on how the Zinnos and other homeowners can use and maintain their properties. The developer set up a Waterford Village Homeowners Association to enforce the restrictions laid out in this declaration. About 4 years ago, Deanna Zinno said she and her husband Matthew bought an ice rink to set up on their property. She said her son, Enzo, then 7, had gotten into hockey and they wanted a place where he and his friends could skate and practice. Deanna Zinno said she had seen rinks, not to mention basketball hoops, soccer nets, and even a sports complex set up at other homes in the neighborhood. And the photo from the Buffalo News shows a really nice ice rink with kids simply playing hockey on it. We knew it had been done before and thought that might be kind of fun for our kids to do, she said. And then all the kids in the neighborhood can come play and have fun. And it's so much better for them to be outdoors and do stuff outdoors than be inside on a screen. They found and purchased a rink for $7,000. The couple determined the rink, which is 25 feet by 50 feet, wouldn't fit in the backyard. The front yard really was our only option if we were going to do it, Deanna Zinno said. They set it up for the first time during the winter of 2021-22. The rink is laid out lengthwise in front of their home along the street, and its white plastic walls blend in with the snow, with protective netting at the ends to limit damage from stray pucks. You take it down by the end of February, so it's roughly 2 months that it's up, she said. Before initially setting up their rink in late 2021, the Zinnos reviewed Waterfront Village's declaration, which didn't say anything about temporary ice rinks. However, about a week after the rink went up, even before the ice had frozen through, the Zinnos received an objection from the Homeowners Association. We were frustrated because we thought we were doing the right thing, Zinno said, adding she doesn't hold anything against the association board members for trying to do their jobs. In a follow-up note, the association's board said the Zinnos would be allowed to keep their rink in use that winter. However, moving forward, and consistent with the forthcoming revised guidelines, temporary ice rinks will still not be permitted on the front of any properties, the board stated. The association board updated these guidelines in August of 2022. The revised guidelines stated that temporary ice rinks were allowed between November and March without the need to seek prior approval in a homeowner's backyard. The Zinnos that fall formally sought permission to set up the rink in their front yard, sending a lengthy application accompanied by statements of support from the neighbors. We've never once heard any negative comments, Deanna Zinno said. The association rejected the application, but the Zinnos still set up the rink that winter, requesting that the structure be allowed to remain because its initial use predated the rule change. The Waterfront Village HOA on November 22, 2022, told the Zinnos it would begin fining them $100 per week until the rink was removed. The Zinnos retained attorney Guy J. Agostinelli and sued the HOA in March of 2023. The association board, the Zinnos argued, updated the Waterford Village architectural guidelines, but its members did not amend the subdivision's declaration. To do so, the board needed to seek and obtain approval for the restrictions on temporary ice rinks from 2/3 of the subdivision's homeowners, the Zinnos said. Because the board didn't do that, the new limits on ice rinks aren't valid, they claimed. While the suit was active, the Zinnos set up the rink for the 23-24 winter, the 24-25 winter, and again last month. The association told the Zinnos as of February 23 they had racked up $1,200 in rink fines. 1 year later, the association said the family owed $700 in rink fines for the 23-24 winter and threatened starting February 27th of 24 to boost the fine to $1,000 per week. In an affidavit included in the court record, Mark Zogaria, a member of the association's board, said many neighboring residents in the development complained about the size, location, and visual impact of the ice rink. He stated the Waterford Village Declaration and the association's bylaws give the board the authority to adopt and publish rules and regulations governing the use of property and establish penalties for infractions. Guidelines prohibiting front yard ice rinks was exactly such a rule and regulation. However, State Supreme Court Justice Peter Allen Weinman found the board's unilateral decision to change its rules circumvents the democratic voting process required by the HOA declaration. Both sides had asked for summary judgment in the case. Weinman ruled in the Zinnos' favor. He agreed with the Zinnos family that because the board didn't seek and get approval of 2/3 of Waterford Village homeowners, the rule change is invalid. The Zinno family and any other family are free to erect and enjoy a skating rink on their front lawn, wrote Weinman, who also voided the fines the association had leveled on the Zinnos. And now a feature story beyond mean, when bullying hurts all children and what caregivers can do about it. Every day, thousands of kids suffer the fear, shame, and frustration of being bullied. More than 19% of children aged 12 to 18 say they have been targeted by peers, with a frightening number of cases happening online. Here's what parents should know about bullying and the actions that can help stop it. Bullying takes many forms. Kids can be cruel, as the old saying goes, but the bullying is a next-level threat that harms children on both sides of the conflict, with short-term as well as long-term consequences. Research shows that bullies and their targets do poorly in school, often dropping out before earning a high school diploma. Many face anxiety, depression, or substance use as adults, fueling physical health problems that feed on stress. Bullying is not merely a normal childhood experience, but rather it's a major public health concern. There are different forms of bullying: physical, verbal, and social. Physical bullying happens when a child hits, kicks, trips, pushes, chokes, or otherwise hurts another child. Stealing, hiding, or damaging a child's belongings is another form of physical bullying. Verbal bullying can mean teasing, taunting, name-calling, or threatening another child out loud or in writing. Repeated insults based on gender, race, sexual identity, weight, appearance, and other traits can be part of the pattern. Social bullying happens when two or more kids go after another child. They may try to shame and isolate their target, leaving them out of activities or spreading rumors about them. Encouraging other kids to join in can intensify the effect. Online bullying is when kids attack their peers through text, social media, chat rooms, gaming channels, and other digital spaces. This type of bullying can be more difficult to recognize. Kids who bully pick the time and place carefully, both to gain attention and avoid getting caught. Beyond school bullying can also happen in other places, like the school bus or bus stop, during field trips, and in places like playgrounds, gyms, pools, sport fields, and even houses of worship. Bullying is often about power. Young bullies might try to feel more important by picking on others who seem different. Children with larger or smaller bodies, for example, often are targeted. So are kids from different racial, ethnic, social, or religious backgrounds. Physical differences and intellectual disabilities can be a target for bullies as well. Girls are bullied more often than boys in the United States. They're also more likely to face harmful comments about their bodies or be the target of sexual jokes meant to embarrass them. Additionally, kids who identify as LGBTQ face even greater risks. Where a child lives also can play a role. Research shows that kids in small towns and rural areas are bullied more often than those in cities or suburbs. Some kids bully because they want to feel powerful or in control. They might feel like they don't have enough power in other parts of their life. Sometimes they may even be victims of bullying themselves and are just passing along the hurt they feel, or they may be attempting to take back some power they feel they've lost. There are signs you can look for if you suspect your child is the victim of bullying. These can include physical symptoms such as headaches or stomach aches. There can be noticeable changes in behavior like changes in eating habits, trouble sleeping, nightmares, worsening grades, and hating or avoiding school or other places where they would typically have social interactions. Other noticeable concerns include lost items that could indicate they are being stolen, and a sudden loss of friends or a new layer of stress to existing friendships. The most concerning signs of bullying are unexplainable injuries, self-harm, or talk of suicide. The first thing you should do if your child comes to you with a bullying problem is to listen with love and without judgment. Ask them exactly what happened and when. Reaffirm that you are there to help them find solutions. Keep in mind that a child may not be ready to share because they feel embarrassed or ashamed. Let them know they can talk to you when they're ready. You might feel tempted to call the bully's parents or rush over to the school to meet with the principal. Focus first on helping your child feel more powerful in the situation. If the bullying doesn't stop, seek help from school leaders, counselors, teachers, coaches, and others, including your pediatrician. It can also help to show your child how to look the aggressor in the eye and stand still and calmly walk away. This takes a lot of courage, so offer to rehearse with them until it feels natural. Asking a bully, "Why would you do or say that?" can weaken their sense of power in the moment. Other responses to try include, "I'll talk to you, but I'm not going to fight, and I'm not afraid to get help if you don't stop." It's also important to encourage friendships your child has that appear healthy. Kids with healthy friend groups to support them are less vulnerable to bullies. If they don't have many friends at school, explore local groups where they can meet kids their age. Encourage sports, clubs, and hangouts. Now, if your child is bullying others, if you see signs that your child is hurting, shaming, or excluding someone, take action right away. They'll need your support in learning new ways to treat others. Require them to treat others with respect, even kids that might dislike or disagree with. Make sure your child understands what bullying is and why it's wrong. Set firm, consistent limits on hurtful words or actions, and model kindness and tolerance in your dealings with others so your child has a reference. If they are engaging in bullying, discipline them in non-physical ways that don't encourage aggression. Use positive discipline strategies that teach responsibility and empathy. Be sure to praise and encourage them when they show kindness and appropriate behavior. You can also explore possible reasons why they are bullying. You may find out that they are experiencing trauma, as hurt people hurt people. If that's the case, talk with their pediatrician or a mental health provider for support. Encourage intervention. Help build your child up to be the person who stands up for those who are being bullied. Teach them not to just sit and watch. Instead, they can yell "stop" and help the bullied child walk away. Have them take the bullied child to a trusted adult and encourage them to be a friend. They'll feel less alone, and it sends the message that bullying is never okay. Bullying isn't just kids being kids. It's a problem that all parents, caregivers, teachers, and school leaders must take seriously. A community approach is the best way to ensure that all kids feel safe wherever they go. Article written by Dr. Mavish Mandini, the creator of Down the Yellow Brick Road, a journey with your pediatrician podcast. She is an outpatient pediatrician and pediatric hospitalist for a community hospital here in upstate New York. It's the Sunday, January 25th, Buffalo News. Your reader for this hour, Chuck Stevens, here on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And an article I came across the other day, it was really interesting. 4 towns here among the most competitive in U.S. housing. Trying to buy a home in the town of Tonawanda isn't just competitive by local standards, it's one of the most competitive municipal housing markets in the country, according to real estate tracker Redfin. There are only enough homes for sale in the town of Tonawanda to cover about half a month's home sales, which helps make it the fourth most competitive housing market in the country, Redfin said. Just behind at number 6 is North Tonawanda. There are only enough homes on the market to cover a month's worth of sales. That competition means homes in those towns sell fast. In the town of Tonawanda, about 40% of the homes sell within 2 weeks of hitting the market. In North Tonawanda, 48% sell within 2 weeks. And that competition pushes up prices too. Town of Tonawanda homes sell for an average of 9% above their most recent listing price, while in NT, the premium is a little more than 8%, Redfin said. And there are 2 other Western New York communities that just missed being in the top 10. Cheektowaga was number 11, with homes selling at an average premium of 8%, and with the median home spending less than 2 weeks on the market. West Seneca was number 12, with 44% of the homes selling within 2 weeks and an average premium of 8% above the most recent listing price. Affordability and the supply of housing play a big role in how competitive a market is. All of the 4 Buffalo Niagara markets on the list had median sale prices below $300,000, and the region has very few new homes being built. Just 74 homes were built during November in Buffalo, while Austin, Texas built 3,465, Redfin noted. Competition and affordability are closely connected, said Asad Khan, a senior economist at Redfin. And let's move over to the Asking Eric column. Sisters have been estranged, but one wants closure. Dear Eric, I guess I don't know how to let it go. My sister is 5 years older. There was a problem during a visit she made with her grandson more than 10 years ago. Her husband caused chaos and confusion, but she blamed me. She said she would never speak to me anymore, and she hasn't. Our beloved sister passed this year. I called to inform her. She grunted and hung up. It is so hurtful. Any suggestions as to how to have one more conversation before we both leave this earth? And it's signed, Baffled. Well, Eric replies, Dear Baffled, the conversation you're looking for may not be the same as the conversation that's possible. It'll be helpful to right-size your expectations and proceed from a place of acceptance. While it's not totally clear what happened a decade ago, it clearly impacted your sister enough to sever all ties. This is a hard place from which to build, and I understand how hurtful it is. The silent treatment is not conducive to making amends or finding common ground. It sounds like you want to reconnect with her, and while that's understandable, it may not be doable right now given what she said and done. Indeed, her actions strongly suggest that she's not open to it for whatever reason. That doesn't mean that you can't get away, or rather get any of what you want, but it may not come from her. I'd offer that in addition to clarity and connection, you're also seeking closure. The latter may be the easiest to come by, as it can start internally. In lieu of a conversation, consider writing down your feelings in a letter. Express your love for her, your sadness over the split, your grief about your other sister, your disappointment about the way things have turned out, anything that's on your heart. Use I statements so that it doesn't sound like you're blaming her. Settling the score isn't the goal. The goal is to be heard. I want to warn you, you may not get a response from this letter. But if you send it knowing that this might be a possibility, you'll be in a better position to say what you need to say. Then you can release it and this relationship from expectations. Next letter. Dear Eric, we are seniors ages 76 and 77 on a limited income. Our living expenses are high for medical reasons. As a result, we carefully plan our restaurant visits. Although we do not and never have frequented very expensive restaurants, we do enjoy several in the X amount of range or an occasional higher amount. We all know prices have skyrocketed, but when we add the recommended 10% to 15% tip, restaurant dining becomes rather unaffordable. On the other hand, many restaurants are struggling to keep customers and to stay open. So what is the better choice? Tip less or just not dine out and support those restaurants at all? Signed, Dining Dilemma. Good question. We're all running into that. Dear Dining, I empathize with your concerns. The rising costs of food and overhead trickle down to the menu, making dining out a trickier enterprise, especially at a time when home budgets are shrinking. It makes for some difficult accounting. However, the best solution is to treat yourself while also not mistreating service staff. Consider your tip to be part of the cost of the meal and budget accordingly. This might mean that your total allowance for food goes down by 15% or 20%, the industry standard, which might translate to one less appetizer, one less drink, etc. Tipping is a custom in America that has been built into the financial structure of the restaurant industry, which means that, although it's not required, to not tip means that someone else works for you for free. Many diners complain that this isn't something that they choose, and if servers wanted to guarantee an income, they should choose another profession. What those diners fail to realize is that by choosing to go to a restaurant with tipped servers, they are choosing to be a part of this financial arrangement. If they didn't want to be, they'd go to a buffet or a restaurant with no servers, or, the most ideal in my opinion, a restaurant that pays its servers a living wage and has built the cost of labor into their prices. Most servers are being paid a rate of $2.83 an hour. More times than not, this gets completely eaten up by taxes, meaning that every time a server approaches your table, brings your food, explains the menu, makes a recommendation, prepares your cappuccino, or clears your plate, they're doing it for free. The same for the bartenders, whom the servers tip out, and the bussers. You deserve a nice night out, but they also deserve to pay their bills. You can budget in a way that serves both. Let's move over to the sports page from the Sunday Buffalo News. What's on everybody's mind these days is the coaching carousel with the Bills. Bills GM Brandon Beane conducting an open search for Buffalo's next head coach. Here's a case for each candidate. A search committee that includes quarterback Josh Allen is meeting with a wide array of candidates to determine who should replace Sean McDermott as the Buffalo Bills coach. General Manager and President of Football Operations Brandon Beane is leading the search. He's joined by Allen, Bills President of Business Operations Pete Gwelly, owner Terry Pagula and his daughter Laura, and Assistant General Managers Brian Gray and Terrence Gray. So here's a snapshot of candidates we know will interview and others to watch. Known candidates include Brian Daboll, current position fired as New York Giants head coach after a 2-8 start to the 2025 season. His background, a 24-year coaching veteran who attended St. Francis. Daboll was voted the Associated Press Assistant Coach of the Year in 2020 for his work with the Bills. He was on the New England Patriots staff during 4 Super Bowl victories and helped Alabama win a national championship in 2017. Daboll also was named the AP's Coach of the Year in 2022 for leading the Giants to a 9-7 record and a playoff appearance. He went 11-33 for the rest of his tenure. The key statistic, Allen reached new heights under Daboll in 2020 when the Bills quarterback set single-season franchise records with 4,544 yards, 37 touchdown passes, a 69.2 completion percentage, and a 107.2 passer rating. The case for Daboll: none of the other candidates have as much experience and pedigree as Daboll. He galvanized the locker room and understands the culture that's already in place. Daboll worked with Beane and Pegula, plus Daboll has a close relationship with Allen. Daboll should be able to hire a strong staff. His assistant coaches in New York were a topic of criticism, but did he learn from the mistakes that led to his exit with the Giants? How will his offense differ this time around? The Bills can't spam quarterback design runs when Allen is 30 years old. Who will call the plays, and what's the play on defense? Next up, Joe Brady, current position, Bills offensive coordinator. His background: Brady learned under Sean Payton in New Orleans before the Bills play caller helped LSU win a national championship with Joe Burrow at quarterback. Brady was the Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator for nearly 2 seasons before he arrived in Buffalo as quarterback's coach in 2022. He was promoted to offensive coordinator in November of 2023. A key statistic: in 7 playoff games with Brady as their offensive coordinator, the Bills averaged 28.4 points and 377.6 yards. The case for Brady: continuity. The Bills wouldn't have to overhaul their personnel on offense. The same schemes that produced the NFL MVP and rushing champion could remain. Hiring Brady would go over well in the Bills' locker room, and theoretically, he should be able to continue the winning culture established by McDermott. The team could hire an up-and-coming coach to call plays, with Brady hiring an experienced defensive coordinator to strengthen that unit. There are questions surrounding Brady's candidacy. He's never been a head coach at any level. Could he hire an experienced, effective staff that's capable of developing players? Is Brady going to call plays? If not, are you getting the most out of him? Can he handle the pressure that will come with the job? Many fans wouldn't love this hire, so how would the Bills sell it to the public? Then Anthony Weaver, his current position, defensive coordinator of the Miami Dolphins since 2024. His background: a longtime assistant coach, including 2013 as the Bills' defensive line coach. Weaver became a head coach candidate through his work as the Baltimore Ravens defensive line coach, assistant head coach, and run game coordinator. His key statistic: in 2024, before the Dolphins stripped their defensive talent, Miami ranked 4th in total defense and 9th in next-gen stats. Case for Weaver: for the Bills to reach new heights, they need to fix their defense. Weaver is an accomplished coordinator who could get more out of his players on Buffalo's roster. The Ravens' run defense ranked 1st and 3rd in 2021 and 2022 respectively, while Weaver was in charge. If the Bills opt for another defensive-minded coach, they could retain Brady or hire an up-and-coming play caller to lead the offense. Or Weaver could emerge as a candidate to be their defensive coordinator if he's not retained in Miami by Dolphins coach Jeff Hafley. Anthony Lynn, current position, running backs coach and run game coordinator since 2024. Key statistic: Lynn led the Chargers to a 12-4 record in 2018, with quarterback Phillip Rivers throwing for 4,308 yards and 32 touchdowns. The case for Lynn: Lynn is an outstanding assistant coach. In 2025, Commanders rookie running back Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, a 7th-round pick, rushed for 805 yards. But the Los Angeles Chargers went a combined 33-31 and one playoff appearance during Lynn's 4 seasons as their head coach from 2017 through 2020. The Commanders' offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury parted ways with the team, so Lynn may be a candidate to return to Buffalo as an assistant. He was the team's assistant head coach and running backs coach in 2015 and 2016. Then there's Grant Udinski, the current position. He's the offensive coordinator of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The background, Udinski is viewed as one of the NFL's bright, up-and-coming coaches. But he's only 30 years old and broke into the NFL in 2020 as a coaching assistant with the Carolina Panthers, who had Brady as their offensive coordinator. Udinski spent 3 seasons on Kevin O'Connell's staff with the Minnesota Vikings before he joined Liam Cohen in Jacksonville. A key statistic, Jaguars' first-year coach Cohen called the plays in Jacksonville, but Udinski had a hand in helping quarterback Trevor Lawrence throw 18 touchdowns and 3 interceptions over the team's last 6 games. The case for Udinski, unproven coaches have won in the NFL. Sean McVay was 31 when he got hired by the Rams and led the franchise to the playoffs with 11 wins. The Bills could hire someone like Udinski and hand the defense over to an experienced coordinator. Younger coaches tend to have an easier time connecting with players, but there's significant risk in hiring someone who's never called plays or led a program at any level. Lou Anarumo, whose current position the defensive coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts. Background, he's emerged as one of the NFL's best defensive play callers and strategists in Cincinnati, where Anarumo helped the Bengals reach Super Bowl by holding Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs to a field goal in the second half. The Bengals intercepted Mahomes in overtime to beat the Chiefs 27-24, and Cincinnati lost to the Rams in the Super Bowl 23-20. A key stat, the Colts this season ranked 31st in passing yards allowed per game at 247.9, 15th in sacks, they had 39, 16th in next-gen stats for pressure rate, 7th in rushing yards allowed per game, 101.9, and 21st in points allowed per game at 24.2. The case for Anarumo, it's not a bold prediction to suggest there's little to no chance that the Bills hire him. His stock is not as high as it was in 2023 when he was a finalist for Arizona's head coach vacancy. That said, he's worth interviewing because he's respected, experienced coordinator who can provide insight into the Bills' defense, including personnel. And it's important for Beane to talk to assistant coaches who could become candidates for future openings on the staff of whomever Buffalo hires to replace McDermott. Then there's Philip Rivers. Current position, he came out of retirement this season to play quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts, and his only coaching experience is at St. Michael's Catholic High School in Fairhope, Alabama. The background, he ranks 8th all-time with 63,984 passing yards across 18 NFL seasons. A key stat, only 9 quarterbacks in NFL history attempted more passes than Rivers. He attempted 8,226. The case for Rivers, a fresh voice and different perspective. He understands how to lead, and his football intellect is off the charts. Names to watch include Chris Shula, current position defensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Rams. His background, Shula has worked under McVay with the Rams since 2017, rising from assistant linebackers coach to defensive coordinator. Shula's uncle Mike spent 2 seasons on the Bills staff as a senior offensive assistant in 2022 and 2023. A key stat there, the Rams' defense this season ranked top 10 in points allowed, sacks, expected points allowed per play, touchdowns allowed, pressure rate, and rushes of 10-plus yards allowed. The case for Shula, an accomplished young, age 39 coach who could help the Bills lure a bright offensive mind to lead the offense. Shula can help Buffalo get more out of its pass rush and take advantage of its playmakers in the secondary. Clint Kubiak, whose current position, offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. His background, 5 seasons as an offensive coordinator, have prepared Kubiak for a head coaching opportunity. His father, Gary, led the Denver Broncos to a Super Bowl victory. Key stat there, the Seahawks 28.4 points per game this season, ranking 3rd in the NFL. The case for Kubiak, a skilled play caller who's worked under some of the most effective head coaches in the NFL. Then there's Nathan Schleihas, current position, pass game coordinator for the LA Rams. His background, the former University of Illinois quarterback, draws plays from McVay, a role once filled by Bengals coach Zach Taylor. Before his 2 years in Los Angeles, Schleihas was offensive coordinator at Iowa State. The key stat, the Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford threw a career-high 46 touchdown passes this season. The case for Schleihas, you're going to hear his name in head coaching searches until he gets a job, but it's too soon to hire him. Schleihas is another bright assistant coach who's learned under the NFL's best. Davis Webb, a current position quarterbacks coach and pass game coordinator for the Denver Broncos. His background, the former NFL backup quarterback, including 3 seasons behind Josh Allen here in Buffalo, has been on Peyton's staff in Denver the past 3 seasons. The key stat, Broncos quarterback Bo Nix has led his team on 9 fourth-quarter comebacks and 11 game-winning drives in 2 seasons. The case for Webb, Webb has a relationship with Allen and the personality that's needed as a head coach. He has leadership qualities and learned under 2 great offensive coaches, Peyton and Dable. Taking a look at some scores and standings here, conference championship games in the NFL today in the AFC include New England at Denver at 3 p.m. and the NFC, the LA Rams at Seattle, 6:30 p.m. And of course, the winners advance to the Super Bowl, which is going to be played Sunday, February 8th at Santa Clara, California. Interesting to note, in the hockey standings in the NHL Eastern Conference, Tampa Bay leads with 68 points. Detroit follows at 67, Montreal at 63, and our own Buffalo Sabres nicely tucked in at 61 points, which is just great to see, and what a win streak they've been on. You've been listening to the Sunday, January 25th edition of the Buffalo News here on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Your reader has been Chuck Stevens. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have reading a Buffalo magazine. Following that at noon is the Sunday Gusto. And at 1 o'clock is the Sunday front section of the New York Times. Stay with us for these readings and more. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,